particular day I was in Tanzania and we had a day trip planned, and we had prayed that morning as normal for God's protection, for God's leading us. We had spent the whole day together and coming back into the capital of Tanzania, which is Dar es Salaam. As we're getting close to the city, we were in our travel van with about 10 people, and we got front driver's side flat tire. If you've been in a van like that, you know, it dips down with that kind of flat tire. We ended up pulling into a dirt parking lot, but it was still outside the city, and we were able to get the van pulled in there. And so we get out of the van and realize that we actually have a spare tire, but we don't have the correct equipment. We started to think, well, how can we get creative on this? We ended up going and getting big boulder rocks. At the same time, we ended up borrowing or finding someone that would let us borrow a shovel, and we dug literally a 3-foot hole under the tire. As the hole allowed the van to start to go lower on that side, those rocks that we had placed became a jack. It literally took us probably three hours to make this whole process work. By that time, it's late at night, we get back on the road, and it's another hour and a half, 2 hours to get to the other side of the city to where we're staying at. In the morning, we get up for our breakfast time, and the missionaries come and sit down with us, and they're like, you know, you really have to hear what happened. They believed our 3-hour delay was a provision by God. During that exact 3 hours in the exact area that we would have been navigating, traveling, there was a government protest, and we would have been driving and driven right into it and been involved with it. And so, as serious as they can be, it gives me goosebumps to think back to it. They felt like God had directed our paths and caused us that break where we had to be patient and we had to rely on Him. And He kept us from what could have been less than a best situation. I mean, we don't know, but they counted it as protection. And that's just something that, in that moment, and I've had some other situations on the mission field, but in that moment it was a new or a kind of a realization that I've got to trust God no matter what comes my way.
So I was born and raised in a family that we just were inside of the church a lot. And so I just knew what it looked like to be inside of a church from a really young age. It was like a discipline of our families. And I remember my dad saying, you can play travel soccer, but you're never gonna miss church. My dad also was really emotionally not present in our family. He didn't know that part of being a good dad meant to be present when us kids were awake. And so when I was in college, I had to write a paper, and the paper was about a childhood experience that you had. And my childhood experience was about the absence of my dad. He somehow got his hands on this paper that I had written in this class. I went to Spring Arbor, he showed up behind Village B, and he had this handwritten letter on this lined sheet, yellow sheet of paper, and it was folded up, and he handed it to me, and he said, I never realized how much the absence of me in your life really impacted you. My dad and I got to then walk through a season of reconciliation. My dad became my best friend. He was he spent a lot of time trying to be a really great dad. And I graduated from college, my husband and I, who we met here at Spring Arbor. We got married. We had no business getting married. We both had every red flag possible about why we shouldn't get married. And like every good 20-year-old, we decided we'll beat the odds, let's get married anyways. And so we got married. And we went like this on a map. We ended up moving to Dallas. It was the biggest city where we landed. I quickly got into the professional world of Dallas, which is as big and large as it sounds. And I just was like grasping for all kinds of success. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be like the headline of the news. If you were to read my journal at these same times, the journals and the pages of them were full of just like a really broken heart. I just like was a creature of wanting to like experience more and experience more. But if I'm honest, now I can look back, I like was just trying to fill this gaping hole in my heart. But I was still a really great, faithful churchgoer. My dad was the only one who knew like how dark of a spot I was. And then I got the call that you hope you never get on January 6th, and that my dad had died out of nowhere. And for me, that was the moment I was like, I am taking my life into my own hands. My mom would tell you now today that my dad spent the last 6 months of his life on his knees every single day in his bedroom praying for his daughter's life to be saved. And a lot of me visualizes that my dad, when he met Jesus, that they gave each other a high five and were like, we got her. And I also, in the midst of that, I had filed for divorce. And I had a friend who said, I think you just need to like get away. And so I went to her lake house in East Texas. And that morning I had gone to breakfast with someone and he had handed me this book. Basically you're supposed to read scripture every single day, and then it's basically saying like stay clean for 24 hours. So I was like, okay, I can do this. And all I had taken with me was my journal, my Bible, and this book. And then I had my headphones. And one of the prompts in the book was basically like put your headphones in or sit down with scripture and like read these verses. And I have this in my ears at this point, and I'm sitting there on the floor with my journal and a TV I can't figure out how to turn on, and I'm like audibly screaming at God, and I'm just like, I don't believe you're real anymore. I don't see you in an evidential way in my life. Like, I don't believe that you're actually real. And I think what I've been doing and going to church is all fake. I don't believe it. And it was the first time that I would tell you that I heard the subtle whisper of God say, child, you just are not listening to me. It's 2:32, which I happen to have tattooed on my arm, because I would tell you that was the time when I believed that God came down and he met me. And not only, that wasn't the first time he came down. Like, God was sitting and pursuing my heart, but that was the first time that I finally responded to who he was. The thing that was so different about this compared to the 30 years, 35 years before that was it was the first time I, one, confessed sin, and two, I like had this visual U-turn in my life of like, I'm going to walk in a different direction. And I tell people that I meet with or that I mentor, and I just like say on repeat, there's so much of what God says in scripture that we, especially as young people, we read it and we're like, this seems really boring, or this feels like I'm gonna miss out, or this feels like you're trying to hold something that's good from me. And now I look at it and I'm like, all of those things were just intended for my good. Like, you literally were just trying to protect my heart from consequences that I still today, on whatever day today is, I like am still dealing with the consequences of my life in Dallas. And oftentimes I have to answer, I was so stubborn in his pursuit of me that it took the death of my father to really get my attention and to kind of ask the question like, do you believe what you've known for so long enough to let it penetrate your heart?